Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 29 of Breaking the Cycle to Step Forward podcast with myself, Chris Tuck, and
Beverley Ann. Hello.
So today we are together, as you can see, in Bev's home, and we've been walking along the beach, hence why I've still got my hat on because it's freezing. And we've had a really good, nice friendship day today, haven't we?
We have, and that leads very nicely to the question that we've received and the topic that we're going to be talking about today.
And it is friendship. And the question was, how has or have your lived experiences impacted your ability to make friends or friendships when you're dealing with trauma? So what does that look like for different people? And Beverley and I only became friends as a result of working in this area. We become aware of each other, didn't we?
Yes.
And then we had a soft chat, a superficial chat, and then we got deeper and we peeled back the layers, and then we realized that actually we'd gone round in circles around each other in the local area. We had similar experiences, and yeah, we've become good friends from then on, really, haven't we, as we've become to understand each other. And
that's what's really nice, because it's evolved.
Yes.
It's evolved. And I think this is where it's good to look back at about making friendships. And how do you do that with the lived experience when you've been brought up in an environment that's abusive, that's toxic, and your own boundaries and trust have been violated?
Yeah. So before we get onto that area, we thought we'd look at just natural friendships. If you've just been born into a nice, loving, nurturing, caring environment, and what does friendships actually look like? So I can only go through my experience as a child and making those friendships back then, and I never made loads of friends because even back then I was really wary, but I wasn't aware of any of this. But the friendships that I did make, it was there was no expectation from them on me. It was just, can I play with you? Yes, you can. And I knew at the time that I was neglected. I didn't know the word, but I knew that I smelled. I knew that I didn't have nice clothes on. I knew that I didn't look good and I didn't smell good. And that's why I didn't have a lot of friends. And when people did come up to me to make friends with me, I used to be very, very wary. But then once I sort of like understood that these people weren't posing any threat to me, then that friendship evolved into something really nice, and I'm still friends with them now. And in fact, they stepped in and helped me a little bit. So they're, yeah, it's really weird. I've really trashed my own question, really.
Well, no, you haven't, because you're talking about, which is something which is important, because about how friendships evolve, because actually, as you've been saying it, it's made me actually think more about friendship building than our conversation before we even started this, because it's made me realize that most children, if you go on holiday, and you've got children from all different countries that speak all different languages,
and there's no common language,
when they're in a safe environment, so just for the sake of it, let's take it in a park environment or a sand pit, something like that. If you watch children naturally, they will start playing, and somehow they find a way to communicate based on how they are feeling.
Yeah, but they watch each other. If you actually watch children, they watch each other, don't they? And it's their bodily cues and it's their facial cues. That's how they get to know whether that person or that other child is going to be okay with them. Like the smiling and the sharing.
So they're communicating, and because they can't use their mouth to communicate, they're communicating
through their
visually, you know, as you say, mirroring each other, which is a very natural way.
And that's, if you think about the relationship between a caregiver and a child as well, a baby and a child, the baby and the child, we look at the people that we're interacting, and if you get a smile, you smile back.
Yes.
If a mum and dad's blowing, I don't know, making funny noises at the child will give that back. and that's how we learn, and that's how we know things are safe and things are okay. But when we get the reverse of that as well.
So let's stay on the positive.
Yeah.
When a baby, you look at a baby when they're unable to communicate verbally
Yeah.
at a very young age, they very much touch faces and
Yes.
watch the face.
Yeah.
And if, you know, there's various films around that shows you that if the mother has a happy face, the baby will smile back.
Yeah.
If the mother has no response
Mm-hmm.
and the baby can't read it, it gets very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then when the face changes like completely, it starts to cry.
Yeah. There's actual videos on that, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. And that's where attachment comes from.
Right.
And we all do that naturally.
Yeah.
It's instinctive because we are instinctive creatures.
Yeah. And we all like connection. That's what human race is about. Even the animal kingdom, it's all about that, isn't it?
But fundamentally, it's how safe do we feel?
Yeah.
So we're always using our senses, but sometimes we're not aware of it.
Yeah.
Unless, and we weren't aware of it then, what happens is when you're walking into an environment, and we do it as adults, but even as children we do it. Have you ever walked into a group of people and it feels relaxed and everything's good, and you think,
you can just like go, and smile and just say hello to anybody, even if you don't know them.
Because it's how you feel.
Yeah.
However, there's other times when for no reason everyone's smiling, but the body language, you're picking up
a vibe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's something that is instinctive.
Yeah.
You know, people call it energy. You said vibe.
Yeah.
Atmosphere. This is when, you know, our vagus nerve is working. The vagus nerve is registering something doesn't feel right, and it's registered initially in our stomach area.
So it's the gut instinct.
The gut instinct comes exactly from that. So when I think, you know, coming back to lived experience, so for the first 4 years I lived at home with my parents, but I still have memories. I can go back to when I was 3. I have memories of finding sugar at a neighbour's to feed us. I have memories of naturally wanting to look after a younger sibling who's 2 years younger, because between the age of 4 and 2, there's quite a gap.
Yeah.
But then being taken into care, that actually was a really safe environment for me. And for me, it was like naturally, without knowing. I even remember from the very first night knowing that I didn't have to do that. I could sit back.
You just knew,
you
didn't
just
you?
know.
Yeah.
You just know. And for me,
I say that though, I know I've interrupted you. We just knew. There are many people that don't know, and that's why they get into danger or dangerous situations. So we'll talk about that in a little while. Yeah.
But this is where it's important as well for having those safe spaces. So I can now look back and see that part of the reason why I've been able to form relationships is because I know what it feels like to feel safe in an environment.
And unsafe.
And then I also know what it feels like to be unsafe.
And you've compared the two, and you know.
Subconsciously.
Yeah.
That's how I learned. Sadly, though, being in that environment for 6 years and then being sent home, for me, the trauma was being sent home.
Yeah.
And this came up in a conversation we said about earlier, because all those relationships that I formed that were safe, now the adults around me have made the decision to put me back into an environment that other people would consider is the best choice because it's with your natural family.
Oh, yeah, when you was a child,
Yeah. However, it wasn't. So now I've gone from a safe space to an unsafe space. And I can tell you now, even going to school, I was on high alert. Now, I'm not saying I didn't make friends at that senior school, because there's one really good friend, and her name's Claire, and she got in contact with me only a few years ago, 4 years ago. And that feeling, because I've always thought of her.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I had loads of friends.
No.
Because I couldn't talk.
Yeah.
Couldn't speak to people. And I am an honest person. What you see is what you get. And when you can't engage with somebody on a, I felt like that's where the guilt also comes for not being able to tell the truth. So it was when I went back into care as a teenager. As a teenager, it's hard, it's challenging anyway. But then I went back into care. So in some ways I'm in a safe environment, but now I'm a teenager going to a new school with new relationships to form. And I did. And again, you know, there's quite a few people that I didn't want them to see. That's when the mask really came on. I don't want you to know what I'm like inside. And I took the ownership of the abuse, which is often, that's very common, the guilt, the shame.
You need to explain that to people a bit. How does that go in with friendships?
Because if I was coming from a place of guilt and shame because of what was going on with the abuse, so then I feel that if my friends, these friendships I were forming, if they really knew what was going on in their life, would they want to be my friend?
Yeah, I get that completely.
And that's on lots of different levels, not just from the abuse, from the fact that I was a kid from care.
Yeah.
You know, that prejudice,
labels,
what have I done, etc. So can you see, we come at it from, and we're sharing our lived experience because we do anyway, but it helps to see examples of others.
Yeah.
Because it's no good sometimes just hearing about this. You know, sometimes we can go, oh, now I understand it. So I wanted to have relationships and I worked really hard at it. But sometimes what happens is we work so hard at relationship, we try so hard to be someone we feel that we ought to be, that actually that friendship doesn't have any foundations to it, and it's out of balance and out of sync.
Because we've got this notion in our heads of what a relationship should look like, so we deliver that, but often that's not the relationship.
Yeah,
because
also,
we've not built it on mutual understanding, empathy, support, and sharing, and all of that.
But we don't have the boundaries in place,
as well as,
you know, we don't have the trust in ourselves, you know, all these, and you know, these are, when we say that we're communicating, you know, and we're still children at that age, we're looking at how natural it is to play and form a relationship when there's no language. Well, now suddenly we understand language. We've now become so in tune with reading people that even the slightest of nuances can sometimes, we can withdraw, so we're starting relationships on the back foot in a way.
Well, we've got all these preconceived ideas because of our lived experiences, haven't we? That's why it's really difficult, because you don't want to be vulnerable because you're fearful of being hurt, or, you know, you're fearful of whatever is going to go wrong because you're showing your vulnerability.
And vulnerability as a child and a teenager, to me, equated that you weren't safe. Vulnerability means weak, unsafe.
Yeah.
I'm not saying now.
Yeah.
But back then, that's what it equated to me.
To you, yeah.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah. So when I got these friends in my life, I was just so thankful. I was just like, I wanted to keep it at all costs, because it meant so much, because I wasn't getting what I needed at home. So when I got invited round their house for dinner, it was like, oh my God, someone like really likes me. They're inviting me home. And they did invite me home, and I had dinner, and I've never seen such a welcoming, warm, lights were on. I don't know about you, but back when we were children, we had the 50p electric and gas meters, right? They didn't have that.
Yeah.
Their house was warm. It had a light on all the time in every single room. There was an abundance of food. It was like, we went home and their mum was like, hi, did you have a good day at school? Here's a drink and biscuits. And I'm like, what? This ain't normal. What's going on?
Exactly.
So it was then like, I then wanted to keep those friends at all costs. And I'm just thankful that they were true friends and they had my back, because if they didn't, they could have used me.
Yes.
But they didn't. They were really, really good friends, true good friends, and they stood by me. And they were the ones that actually showed me that what I was going through at home was obviously not right, not normal. And that's when I learned about true friendships, and I also learned about the abuse that I was going through, that I already knew wasn't right, but it really painted the picture of happy family, dysfunctional, abusive family. And that's when I decided I needed to get, you know, some help and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And that is when, you know, like I've said before in a previous podcast, when I was in care, I was lucky enough for Auntie Helen to be very honest. So to give, you know, talk about self-respect and that.
Yeah.
Because that's boundaries, trust, all the things that we've spoken about before.
Yeah.
But it's when we look as we're going into adulthood as well, which is really interesting, because there are foundations that we've learned. And so now as you're going into adulthood, I can honestly tell you that in my 20s, I'm very outgoing, but emotionally, I shut my emotions quite well.
Yeah, I did.
Very well. I wouldn't let people in.
No.
And I was often called cold.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Frigid.
Yeah.
But not in the way frigid is meant.
Yeah.
I was just called frigid because I was called the ice queen.
Yeah.
But that was
yeah.
the boundary, the wall that went up.
Yeah. And that's when the mask comes on.
Good old survivor's mask, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Where now when I look back, I love my relationships, but relationships can be different.
Mm-hmm. With different people.
And this is where we were talking, you know, saying that we're friends. So we're friends, but we can go very deep and meaningful, but we're very respectful of each other's boundaries and listening to each other and not just talking.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to talk.
Yeah.
But sometimes one person may need listening to. Also, something you were very good at, Chris, was where I struggled. And I've always said that, you know, being vulnerable has been one of my biggest challenges. Chris would know if I'd gone silent. And I remember once you wanted to video call me and I didn't want to.
No.
I didn't want to because I was in that space. I just wanted to go away and which we do, you know, sometimes I just wanted to go away and isolate and work it out before I came back out. But actually, the thing I've been learning is sometimes when you're hurting the most, that's a great time to speak out. But who to? And that's what's important. Because I've got friends that I would never go to that level with.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say they don't mean a lot to me, because they do. They mean a lot on a different level.
Yeah, on different levels. Yeah. So it's just like, so going back to that question, has your lived experiences and the trauma impact, how does that shape your friendships? What we're saying is you need to, Beverley will always say this, build that relationship with yourself first. What is it you want for you? And then you go out and find relationships and base them on your boundaries. You know, you want mutual trust, you want mutual love, you want mutual respect, you want mutual nurture and care. So that's, what does your relationship look like for you? And you can do that for each person. So if you've got a sibling, you can then go back and revisit that relationship. What does that look like for you going forward? What does your friendship look like on a level where you've got a deep relationship, or you've just got friends that you might go to Zumba with for once a week? So you're not going to get on that level, but for that 1 hour a week, they're your friend in the class.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But you do get to choose what your relationships look like, but you've got to know what it is you want, and that's where the work and the self-reflection comes, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And we've covered this, but it's good to revisit sometimes. So like, for instance, when I say about relationship with self, if we're unable to look after ourselves, if we're unable to just tap in, how am I feeling? Okay, I'm feeling like I need a bit of nurturing today. Okay, what do I need to do to nurture myself? If we're unable to do that for ourselves, how can we expect somebody else to do that for us?
And when we're building these new relationships as adults going forwards, we almost need to tell the people that come into our lives what those relationships are going to look like, because otherwise we're just going to be putting up with everything and anything and almost being treated like a doormat all over again, if that's what our relationships look like in the past.
Yeah, and I find it fascinating. I love watching the reality programs and looking at relationships and how they form, because you see it there. I mean, there's fantastic ones at the moment that I'm watching, And it's really interesting because you can overshare as well.
Yeah.
It's too much too soon.
Yeah.
And when we want to be liked by someone, you know, we've all done it at some time.
Yeah.
You know, we want to be liked. You know, oh well, here you are, this is me.
But there's a fine line for that, though, isn't there? Because
Absolutely.
sometimes if you undershare, people think, oh, there's nothing, there's no level where I can connect with this person. But then, as you said, if you overshare, you frighten the life out of them. They've gone. They've run for the hills.
Or what you know, in oversharing, sometimes what you're doing, you're investing everything into this person.
Yeah.
And you're actually putting them up on a pedestal. And I'm saying this not as a critique. I've done it. You know, you put them up on a pedestal. They're this super, you know, person. It's perfect in a friendship, whatever type. And actually, they're human beings.
Yeah, no one's perfect.
No. And when it doesn't go right and you get rejected, oh, that hurts.
And I think
But actually, it shouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
It's experience.
I can honestly say, hand on heart, if someone chases a friendship with me, like really chases it, and I have had that happen to me, I back off because I can't deal with it. It's almost like someone's trying to, even though they're not, but it feels like that to me, they're trying to step into my space, take over my life, take over my time, and I can't just deal with that. So then I push back and I'm like, right, I'm very wary of that person now. I can't deal with them. So I will revisit it, but if they keep doing that, then I will not go there anymore, because it needs to be, as you said before, at a pace that's suitable for you and the other person to forge a relationship, and at what level is this relationship going, and that all takes time.
It does. And when I think about it, you know, I'm a person, it's not just words, it's actions.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, the tortoise and the hare. I am the tortoise. I like it to mutually happen over time. Not saying that everything has to be at slow pace. I'm not saying that, but it's about being heard as well. About being heard. If someone's listening to me, if I think, well, or they want to do something, I think, well, actually, I don't. But you can go with my blessing and do it. Then they're hearing that that's okay. But when they don't hear, then that's a bit of a trigger for me.
So,
and for other people.
Yeah. So friendships, how do you form a good friendship? So if we was to meet each other for the first time, let's take it back a step. I would probably just say, hi, I'm Chris. What's your name? Where'd you come from? What are you interested in?
Yeah, because we'd naturally find common denominators.
Yeah.
You know, so like Chris has got a blue hat on. I normally wear a hat that's pink, but I couldn't find it today. Good. So straight away, we'd have something we could talk about.
Yeah.
And that's how we naturally start finding ways to communicate and finding familiarities. We're always looking to mirror.
Right.
That's a
natural thing,
a
right.
natural thing. So because we want to be accepted, but we want to be, you think of it, we're mammals.
Yeah.
We're part of community. It's important to be in a community, to feel safe, to be surrounded.
And then we'd start like maybe asking each other about pets and hobbies and things like that. So what you're doing is you're trying to find common areas of connectivity that's not going to go too deep into trashing your boundaries or getting too close too soon, because you don't want that other person to push you away, and you don't want to either give everything that you've got away either, because you know you want to make sure that this is a safe thing. So we're talking about now building a relationship after you've gone through trauma. So this is just an example of what maybe we would do. It might not be what you would do, but we would suggest you do this. So over time, you build up a rapport, you build up common interests, you like, you know, I'm getting more and more invested in this person because we've got so much in common. Would you like to go for a dog walk in a safe space that's not your home yet? Yeah. So you would do maybe that a couple of times.
I think the key part here is as well is acknowledging, how do you feel? How do they make you feel?
Yeah, absolutely.
There are times, and it's to, you know, once you start into a friendship or a relationship, you can get to a certain stage and then think, oh,
I'm not quite
sure.
Yeah.
So is it that you need time away for a minute to think about that? Is it something you need to check in with yourself? Is it something you need to verbalize and communicate back? Oh, I wasn't too sure. And see how they respond. We can't control how people respond, but we can share. And sometimes, and it's really sad, is sometimes when we've shared it, some people don't receive it well. And we have to allow them their space. And it does hurt, but if you allow them their space to keep on living, then as you said earlier, there's living their life, keep living their own life, then one day you may be able to revisit things, and then discuss it. But it comes down to communication, but not expecting them to fix you and vice versa. And I think, I look at in one of the questions that came through, there was something said about family as well, feeling the void. Well, I'm very careful how I word things. So I wouldn't say about filling the void. What I'd say about is chosen family. So it's thinking about what you want from a relationship and who's your chosen family.
Yeah. I get everything you've said, but going back to building this relationship. So for me and you, just sharing that. So we, I don't think we did go on a dog walk. We went to probably some events together, didn't we? Because once we found out each other's background, we're like, oh, wow. Have you heard about this? Should we go together? And that's how we started building our relationship, didn't we?
So we were naturally going to different things and finding out, you have your opinion, I have mine. Sometimes we have the same opinion, sometimes we don't. But it said, what I liked about it is that it was said in a way, well, this is how I see it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what's really nice. It's like, oh, it's not the same as my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
let's explore. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the same all the time. Or you knew something different to what I knew.
Yeah. We happen to do that a lot, don't we? Like so much more than me.
No,
yeah, you do. But it was quite a while before we went round each other's houses, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So so it's just like when you build any relationship, just make sure that whatever level you're building it to, that you feel safe all the way along it. And if you don't, and you can sort it out by the communication, have those chats. And if not, you might need to leave that relationship. Every relationship has a lifespan. Sorry, you've got me for life.
I call it, it's a reason,
yes,
a season, or a lifetime.
Yeah.
And this is one of the good things I love about Facebook. And only yesterday, there's a dear friend. Now, I haven't seen her for years, but at a time, things were really a challenge for me. They were also a challenge for her too. And we gravitated towards each other because we could support each other. It was mutual. And she shared something on Facebook. And I thought, oh my God. And I got the opportunity to thank her for a wonderful letter that she sent at a time when I really needed it and I was really low. So I still consider her as a friend. I've not seen her for years.
No.
And sometimes it happens.
Yeah.
Her life's moved on. But that doesn't mean to say that she doesn't mean a lot.
No. And I've got friends like that I made at school, and they were really good friends at school, but then life happens, you grow apart, and I've not seen them in like decades. But every so often, as you said, you'll check in and it's like those years have never happened. And then you've got other friends that literally do only come into your life for, I don't know, I've got a couple of friends that were in my life for 5, 6, 7 years, and now they're just gone out of my life. And exactly that saying that you said, it doesn't matter. But that's the beauty of relationships and friendships, is that you can learn to get into healthy relationships, even if you have gone through trauma as a child, through your lived experiences. You can learn to create those safe, boundaried relationships going forwards. But you've got to know what it is you want. What does a relationship look like for you?
And one of the other things that came through as well in the messages was about abandonment and that feeling of loss when a friendship ends.
Or there's a rejection because they've come on too strong.
Yeah. And what I would say there is, when it's really painful, that's when we need to do some more work and get some support, because sometimes what we've put into that, what we've tried to get from that friendship has been to try and resolve something that we're feeling. And was that necessarily right? And so that's when you sometimes need more support for how you're feeling. Because the way I look at it, sometimes friendships do naturally, as we said, a reason, a season, friendships do naturally move on in a different direction, but it's not necessarily a rejection. That doesn't mean to say it's not right, that how it makes you feel as a rejection. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you're feeling rejected, then what can you do for support with, or, you know, go to the right person for support to look into those feelings and emotions.
Now you've said that, there was one friendship that I had that meant a lot to me, and I mean a lot. And she moved away. Obviously, we had children, first child. She moved away, and I kept pursuing the relationship because I thought we were on the same page. I really thought that we were bosom buddy friends and we was going to be friends for life. And she kept, in her own way, telling me she didn't want me to meet up. Like, excuses kept happening. And I was like, oh, don't worry, I can come to you. Don't worry, I can. And I wasn't reading the messaging. I wasn't reading it. So one day I just thought, I'm going to surprise her. So I drove to her house and I was rejected at the door.
Ouch.
And it was, ouch. It was so hurtful. But I hadn't read what she'd been telling me in an indirect way. I wish she'd just come out and said, actually, this ain't working for me, but obviously she couldn't. So she was telling me in her own way. But I just didn't read it. I didn't see it.
No, and we don't. Sometimes we don't. And I'm not saying that they never hurt, and it's wrongful. I'm not saying that. No one likes rejection. No one does.
No.
You know,
but you live and learn, don't you?
You do live from it. And it's like, okay, what have I learned from that?
To give people their own space and actually ask them the question, like, are we okay? Are we friends still? What have I done to upset you? And have I done something to upset you? Can you tell me so I understand and I apologize? It's communication and growing and evolving, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So we hope we've answered your, because
I don't think we have answered the question, but I think we've given some insight.
I was going to say, because the thing is, it's like anything, there is no right or wrong. Okay, we can only
carry on.
We can only raise awareness, because for you it may be different to someone else. It's like Chris and I. There are some things that I need that maybe Chris doesn't, and vice versa. And it's respecting that. And it's a bit like interest. I'm a huge Strictly fan. So it's recognizing that I love pink, Chris loves blue. But that's what, you know, and then in other friendships, it may be that, you know, we all like Strictly. Do you see what I mean? So there is no right or wrong, but the most important thing is thinking about what's right for you as a person. And when you're able to understand what you need, what you want, then you can go from there.
But I agree with you. I wasn't going to agree with you the way that you started, but yeah, I do agree with you. But what I was going to say is, it's down to feelings. Does this feel right? And if it doesn't feel right, then you've got a right, your gut instinct. She calls it the vagus nerve. I call it gut instinct. She's the professional one in this duo. It's about, for me, to explain to you that just be aware if someone is overstepping their boundaries, taking too much from you, expecting too much from you. You're doing all the running, they're not contributing to this relationship, is it really worthwhile? Is it really sticking with?
And just before we go, there's one other thing I've got to say, and I'm very aware of the time. But for me, you know, I said I like to take time. The worst thing someone can do is suddenly come into my life and want to be in my life the whole time.
Yeah, but that's what I was trying to explain earlier.
Yeah, it's like, whoa.
Yeah. So told you, she explains it better than me. So that's what I was trying to say earlier. It's got to be at a steady pace, not too much too soon,
Yeah.
and not all, because that to a survivor is just, whoa.
What do you want?
Yeah, what do you want? Yeah.
In terms of friendship, anything.
Yeah, it's too much.
What do you want?
Yeah. Got to build trust, guys. Yeah. But it's with self first, says the Queen of Self.
Self-care. Always, once we're able to check in with ourselves, what's it I'm feeling? What's it I need? And that sometimes is the hardest thing to learn. And that's why we do all this talking and sharing. Absolutely.
Anyway, we would love to know what you think about friendships and how your trauma impact, your lived experiences has affected your friendships. It would be great to share, because education and awareness helps us all learn and grow.
Absolutely.
And change.
Yes. And the last thing I want to say is you can share us, follow us. So if you're watching us on video on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us on podcast, whatever the platform is, please subscribe and follow. And don't forget to share it to other people, because it's amazing how, not every week, but how informative people have been saying it is for them, and to know they're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. So we appreciate all your support, guys, and we will see you in the next podcast. Bye.
Bye.